Good morning, everyone. So, Pat, in introducing you this morning, I'm going to read from a text written by your sister Liz about you, and to which we all concur as true. That you are a well-rounded, down-to-earth person who has many gifts and shares them lovingly. That you are a wonderful writer and you have insights about spirituality that cultivate the loving image of God. And consider offering spiritual direction as a sacred privilege. With a master's in theology, years of working as a pastoral associate, spiritual director, and Reiki master, you bring a wealth of knowledge to all you do. You are open to learning and growing from a global community, encompassing all faiths and traditions, and inclusive of all people. As program director for Wisdom House, your ponderings with Sister Pat continues to grow in popularity. You really do live your wisdom charism, and we also know you love your dog Jackson, 16 years old, who has shown you yet another dimension of love. So welcome, Sister Pat, as we begin this new season of Discover Wisdom Conversations, and as you help us review the year that we have just spent.
Thank you, Anne. It's hard to listen to that. I don't know who that person is. I know my sister, of course, I still haven't paid her for this, so I better get to that soon. But anyway, thank you. It really is a delight and a pleasure for me to reflect with you on what we have been doing over the past year. And not only that, but for you to reflect on where you began this journey. And certainly it wasn't just 2 years ago with us. It's been your whole life going on this journey. And so our journey this morning is not one that brings us to another geographical area, but it goes deep within. And when it goes deep within, it can't stay there. It needs to come out into a huge hug for the entire world, the entire creation of wisdom. We focused our year on coming to know and relish our common home. At the end of this year now, I thought we could spend some time just checking in and seeing where we are. So as a review, we've spent 2 years reflecting on Pope Francis's Laudato Si, which invited us, or maybe mandated us, into a relationship with the created world. Invites us to see, to notice, and to be aware of those things around us, and invites us to respond. Our relationship includes the entire world, of course. Every creature, heaven and earth, sun, moon, land and sea, fish, birds, animals, everything, especially us. We tend to forget that when we think of the created world. It's everything out there, but we are truly part of that. The problem is that when God declared everything was good, the emphasis on us to have dominion over took on a whole other aspect, rather than what I think God really wanted. Of course, I always know what God's thinking, so just bear with me. I think it was meant for us to be caregivers, to be responsible for. And so I looked up a couple of other Bible passages, and one from The Message by Eugene Peterson. He's one of my favorite, I want to say alternative spiritual writers or scripture writers that just takes what was written and puts a whole other spin on it. So it makes me spin around with it and begin to see new things. So this is what Eugene Peterson says, what God said. And so God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image. make them reflecting our nature so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, Earth itself. God created human beings godlike. And God blessed them and said, prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. And in the end, God looked over everything God had made and said, this is good. This is really, really good. And I believe on that day, not only did God mean that it was good, but I think God was hopeful that putting us in charge in a way to be responsible, that God had hope for the future. And so we stand at this point in time and look at creation. And we need to ask ourselves, is it good? Is it good? Can I say that with God? And how responsible I am for the future in making it good. And so maybe it's in the little things where we have been responsible for our common home. The little things like noticing. Last week, I noticed a red bird. Now, last week it was pretty cold. Red birds should have already been in their winter habitat, but there he or she was, sitting on a branch that was barren. And Anne looks out and says, oh, look, there's a red bird. Yes, a red bird. We noticed that. And it filled us with joy and gladness. Because red birds, their color stands out, especially when it snows. They stand out and you go, wow, color in the midst of all this white. And the other day, last week, when the winds were really blowing around here, a tree fell over. And I went out and I was looking at it. Now, in the past, I would have never gone out and looked at a tree that had fallen, but there it was. And I just felt the sadness in that tree just laying there, barren by itself. But then I thought of all the good that tree had done, the birds that it had given home to, the squirrels that had run up and down the sides and had fun playing on that antler tree. Life takes on a new level for me when I begin to see with new eyes. One of my favorite go-to people when it comes to creation and nature is John Muir. He's the Scottish-American naturalist, author, environmentalist who lived from 1838 to 1914. And his quotes are known for their connection to nature and his advocacy for wilderness preservation. He wrote so much about keeping wild places wild that President, now I'm going to forget his name, Truman, I guess, or was it Roosevelt? Anyway, one of the presidents, the one who started the National Park Service, did so in collaboration with John Muir and his Sierra Club. John Muir started the Sierra Club to make the mountains glad. John Muir had a passion for nature. He said, when we try to pick anything out of nature by itself, we find that it is connected to everything else in the universe. We are truly one. He offered this meditation, and this is where I really discovered John Muir. And he said, we are members of a human family, but before us existed all that composed the created world. We are latecomers in the scheme of things. And so John Muir asks, what was it like without us? Can we imagine a time when the flowers blossomed undisturbed? Or before insects or winged creatures or birds of the air or sea came to be part of their life? Can we imagine a time when the animals roamed freely upon the land, unrestrained by human barriers? What was it like for them to get used to our presence, the human presence on the earth? They are, in a way, our ancestors, our horizontal brothers and sisters. And I always like to add, like all older siblings, how well did they welcome us into the family? And how are we getting along these days? I think that when we begin to personalize nature, we are able to connect with it and form relationships. I think of Montfort as he traveled the countryside of France in the 17th and 18th century and took off his hat and placed it under his arm as he walked outdoors in the midst of nature. I think of my dad, who had a garden, little garden, in our place in Brooklyn. And every morning he would go out and say good morning to his plants before he said good morning to us. And we'd give him a hard time and we'd laugh about it. But as I reflect on that, I think he saw his plants and his children all as his kids. He had to grow us up all together. And so we have a great respect for outdoor plants, although my dad always said, if you can't eat it, it's not going to grow in my garden. And I'm one of those prissy people. I don't put my hands in the dirt, so I never became a gardener, but I have great respect for gardeners. And I just found out this morning that gardening is the #1 pastime of the American people. So there, we're always learning something new. And then, of course, we know the people who talk to their plants, right? I used to make eyes. What? They're talking to their plants? But, as we grow in wisdom and we discover, it is about the talking. It is about making the relationship, but it's also about the breathing, the air, the oxygen back and forth between the two. And if we read from Rami's revisioning of Montfort's contemplation on wisdom, we hear, wisdom is the mother of all things. She is more than our maker. She is our mother. And she loves us and sustains us as only a mother can. Wisdom dwells with creation to contain, sustain, and maintain us. When you know wisdom as all things, no thing is too small to awaken you to her. The bee, the ant, the ear of corn, a flower, and a worm are each seen wrapped in ecstasy. What awakens you to wisdom, the source of all life? What is one practice you can implement to continue to deepen your relationship with our common home? And one last quote, and I don't remember where I got this from. Creation can continue on without us, but we humans cannot continue on without creation. So, may each of us know deep in our hearts that we are one with creation, and we have been created to be responsible for all of the beauty, the nourishment, the life that lives around us.